Hi, and welcome to the Negotiations and Mediation Training 101. My name is Eugene Mach, and I'll be your presenter today. Imagine the following scenario with me for a moment. You just got hired to be the Director of Human Resources at a new company. You don't know much about the last director, but you know that the hiring process was very fast. It's your first day, and the CFO calls you and wants to see you in her office. Wanting to make a good impression, you get up and you head there straight away. Her assistant shows you into the office, and you realize that the CFO isn't alone. At the conference table is also the CEO. They stop their conversation and quickly inform you that the union has now filed a 10-day strike notice. And it's your job as the new director of HR to figure it out. What would you do? Take a second and pause this video and think about what you would do. If we were in person, I'd have a couple of you share your responses. Okay, so you may be asking what qualifies me to present this information to you. Again, my name is Eugene Mach. I've been an educator for 18 years. My background is in business education, and I have a master's degree in education administration, and will soon have my MBA in HR management. However, what really qualifies me to present this material to you is that I'm a union leader. I have been so for 10 years. I've negotiated multiple contracts. I've helped other unions negotiate contracts. I've been on the strike line. I've been on the picket line. So I've got a lot of experience in contract negotiations. Unfortunately, most people don't get exposed to contract negotiations until they're thrown into the process. So that's my goal today, is to help you feel a little more comfortable and prepared when you find yourself in that situation. So a quick overview of what we're going to take a look at today is, first of all, selecting your team to go to the bargaining table, and then what to expect during the negotiations process. Our objectives for you to be able to do by the end of this session is to list and explain the key roles on a strong negotiations team, and then demonstrate the basic process of negotiation through small group hands-on activity. So real quick, let's take a look at the negotiations team roles that you're going to want to make sure that you have filled before you go to the table. First of all, you need a lead negotiator. This is going to be the person who's in charge at the table. They're going to do most of the talking. They're going to present your proposals and counter proposals, and they're really going to take charge in the room. In management, this is usually the most senior member of the team, whether that's the VP of HR, the director of HR, as in the case of our scenario. Whoever this ends up being is going to be your most dominant person in the room. Next, you're going to have a financial expert. This might be your CFO. It might be a VP of finance, somebody who knows the numbers inside and out. You're going to need a spokesperson. If you end up talking to interest groups like your board of directors, the media, you're going to want to have somebody who's a very good communicator and can spread the message that management is doing everything they can, and if things go badly, why the union is the one who's holding up this process. You're going to need subject matter experts. These are people who know a lot about things like manufacturing, the labor costs, the current contract, what other companies are giving to their employees. There's all sorts of subjects you might want to have experts in the room. You're going to want to have a constituent liaison. This is the person who talks to your stakeholders, finding out what it is they want at the table, and what is it they're willing to agree to, somebody to interact with other management that isn't inside the room, as well as your board of directors. And then you're going to need a record keeper. This is the person who's going to document everything throughout the process. If there's a dispute later on what the meaning of a clause is, this person's going to be very vital to go back to their notes and say, no, this is what we meant when we negotiated this agreement, and that's how we're going to enforce it. Now let's take a look at what happens when we actually go into the room to negotiate with a labor union. First thing that's going to happen is you're going to have your greetings and introductions. As a manager, you're always going to want your lead negotiator to lead this process. You're going to want them to be the ones to speak up first. You're going to want to take charge of the meeting. That shows the union who is in control of this process. If you allow the union to feel like they're in control and they have the upper hand from the beginning, you're starting off on the wrong foot. Now, you also don't want to be confrontational. This should be a collaborative process, but management should be in charge of this process. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to exchange your initial proposals depending on the type of negotiations you're doing. And then you're going to take a caucus. What a caucus is just a break from the negotiations. The two groups go into separate rooms and they look at the proposals from the other side. You're going to mark it up and say, okay, we can accept this, we're not willing to accept this, and you're going to put together counter proposals. When you come back together, you're going to work on coming to agreement on these issues. These are called tentative agreements. So as you agree on each topic, you're going to TA that topic, and then by the end of the process, you will have an entire TA or a tentative agreement for an entire contract. You might have to take a recess. Let's say that this negotiation takes 3, 4, 5, 6 days. You're not going to be able to just go 6 days straight. You're going to have to take a break and come back. When you reconvene, you're going to continue bargaining until you reach a final agreement or an impasse. What I want to do now is take a moment. I've put an example on the screen, and I've also given you handouts of some contract language for unlimited paid time off. This might be an example of language that labor would propose during a negotiation session. So I want you and the people in your group that are sitting at your table, you are the management team at the negotiations table. I want you to read through this language and see if there are things you like, things you don't like, and how would you change this to make this acceptable at your company. Go ahead and pause this video, and then we'll come back in a few when you're done with that process. Now that you've looked at that language, are there things that you can agree to here? Are there things that you would absolutely not agree to? I think most of us would agree that we can't give unlimited time off. There would have to be restrictions, and there would have to be a fair process and very, very well-defined process for how this happens. So whether you like this language, don't like this language, whether you think it might work in your company or not work, this is the kind of thing that you are going to have to be ready to evaluate and negotiate back and forth with the union to come to an agreement on this. Let's go ahead and recap our objectives. So today, you not only learned the key roles on a strong negotiation team, but you also kind of learned what they do. You've also demonstrated that you can look at contract language, have discussions with your team about it, and then offer a counter proposal. We want to make sure that we prepare for the negotiations process because really there is no secret to success. It's just hard work. And I guarantee you, the more time and effort you put into the negotiations process, the easier your day-to-day job is going to be. Thank you for coming today. Your certificates will be available at the door when you leave. If you have follow-up questions, I'm happy to stick around and talk to you one-on-one or as a group.